The 30th of November, 1939. After a false accusation that the Finns shelled the Soviet village of Mainila, Joseph Stalin launches a retaliatory campaign against Finland, triggering the so-called Winter War. With 21 divisions totaling 450,000 men, the Soviet Union invades its Nordic neighbor, as Stalin's regime perceives Finland as a threat due to its proximity to Leningrad. However, the Russian aggression is met with fierce resistance by the Finnish population, as hundreds of thousands of Finns rally behind the cause of defending their country. One of them is a man who will kill over 500 enemy soldiers and will often be regarded as the deadliest sniper of all time. His name is Simo Häyhä. Simo Häyhä was born on the 17th of December 1905 in the village of Rautjärvi in southern Finland near the border with Russia. He was the seventh of 8 children in a Lutheran family of farmers. Simo himself was a farmer and enjoyed several different hobbies, including snow skiing, hunting, and shooting prior to his military service. At the age of 17, Häyhä joined the Finnish voluntary militia civil guard. He was successful in local shooting competitions, and his home was full of trophies for marksmanship. He was not keen to hog the spotlight, and accordingly, in group photos from his youth, he usually stood at the back, until his later successes forced him to take center stage. In 1925, at the age of 19, Simo began his 15-month compulsory military service. However, he did not receive formal sniper training until 1938. Around this time, Europe was on the brink of a significant turmoil, as widespread fear, political upheaval, and a sense of imminent conflict deeply unsettled the continent. On the 23rd of August 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The agreement consisted of 2 parts, one public and one secret. The public part was a non-aggression pact in which each country promised not to attack each other. They also agreed not to provide assistance to a third country that attacked either of them. In addition, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union agreed not to participate with other countries in an arrangement that would affect the other directly or indirectly. The non-aggression agreement was to last for 10 years, and it could be automatically renewed for an additional 5 years if neither party moved to end it. The secret part of the pact was a protocol that established Soviet and German spheres of influence in Eastern Europe. Estonia, Latvia, and Bessarabia fell within the Soviet sphere, according to the protocol. The signatories agreed to divide Poland along the line of the Narew, Vistula, and San rivers. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939 with a German invasion of Poland. On the 3rd of September, Britain and France declared war on Germany. They were fulfilling a promise they had made 5 months earlier to protect Poland's borders. On the 17th of September, the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east. Germany and the Soviet Union then moved to take control of the spheres of influence outlined in the secret protocol. They amended the protocol so that Lithuania and the city of Vilnius fell within the Soviet sphere, and they also adjusted the boundary they had set in Poland. On the 29th of September 1939, they partitioned Poland between them. Germany occupied western and most of central Poland, and it proceeded to annex the western provinces to the Reich. The Soviet Union occupied and annexed the rest of Poland. The German-Soviet Pact also enabled the Soviet Union to annex other territories in its sphere of influence, and Stalin focused his attention on Finland. The Soviets made several demands, including that Finland cede substantial border territories in exchange for land elsewhere, claiming security reasons, primarily the protection of Leningrad, located only 32 kilometers from the Finnish border. Domestically, there was strong opposition within Finland against ceding territory to the Soviet Union, and political leaders and the general public were unified in their refusal to accept the Soviet proposals. Moreover, the territories the Soviet Union demanded were not only valuable in terms of their industrial and strategic significance, but also held historical and cultural importance for Finland, and ceding these territories would have been a major blow to Finland's economy and national identity. After Finland refused the Soviet demands, on the 30th of November 1939, nearly 500,000 Soviet troops stormed into Finland, beginning what would become known as the Winter War. Simultaneously, the Soviet Air Force bombed Helsinki, killing about 100 citizens and destroying more than 50 buildings. The Finns were significantly outnumbered, since Finland at that time had a population of 3.7 million, whereas the population of the Soviet Union was 170 million. Moreover, the Soviet Union outnumbered Finland in planes by 30 to 1 and tanks by 200 to 1. The Finnish soldiers often did not even have uniforms, but they were extremely motivated, usually knew how to ski well, move in snowy forests, and shoot. On the other hand, Soviet troops lacked suitable equipment and were paralyzed by extreme weather conditions, with temperatures dropping by up to -40 degrees Celsius. Furthermore, the Red Army was crippled by Stalin's purges, and soldiers lacked initiative. Simo Häyhä was 33 years old when the Soviets invaded Finland, and he celebrated his 34th birthday on the battlefield. Like many others, he volunteered to fight for his country and became part of Colonel Svensson's 2nd Infantry Division. Because he had hunting experience and was well familiar with the wooded landscape, he was assigned to fight as a solo sniper. He took part in combat for the first time at the end of November 1939. It was Simo's custom to move, well before daybreak, into an area through enemy lines, equipped with a rifle, camouflage clothing, and a few dozen rounds of ammunition. He would frequently pack dense mounds of snow in front of his position to conceal himself, provide padding for his rifle, and reduce the characteristic puff of snow stirred up by the muzzle blast. He was known to keep snow in his mouth while sniping to prevent his breath in the cold air from giving away his position. Simo dealt with the intense cold by dressing properly with multiple layers of clothing. He kept sugar and bread in his pockets, consuming them for the calories necessary to keep his body warm. His slight stature of 160 centimeters assisted him in disguising his position. Hidden in a snow pit, he could lie still and observe the enemy for long periods of time. With his knowledge of the terrain, excellent eyesight, and infinite patience, he would then hunt Soviet soldiers in a similar way he had hunted deer before the war. Simo did not have any special equipment and would shoot at his targets with a regular M28 rifle. It was a basic weapon, which he had mastered through years of experience that had only classic mechanical sights. Nevertheless, according to Soviet testimonies, he was able to accurately hit his target from up to half a kilometer away. Simo preferred iron sights over telescopic sights, as they enable a sniper to present a smaller target for the enemy, and can be relied on even in extreme cold, unlike telescopic sights, which tend to cloud up in cold weather. Another disadvantage of telescopic sights is that sunlight might reflect off the lenses and reveal the sniper's position. In addition to these skills, Simo's father had taught him a very important hunter skill, the ability to estimate distances. This was not a skill he was born with. He had a lot of practice, first by estimating the distance to a target, and then pacing out by steps. In most cases, his estimate was almost perfect. When checking out his estimates, a typical variation from the actual distance was 1 or 2 steps either way at a distance of approximately 150 meters. As a young man, he also learned to estimate the effects of wind and rain on shooting and conditions in the forest. All of Simo's kills were accomplished in less than 100 days, an average of 5 per day at a time of year with very few daylight hours. Simo's division commander, Antero Svensson, credited him with 219 confirmed kills with a rifle and an equal number of kills by submachine gun when he awarded Simo with an honorary rifle on the 17th of February 1940. On the 21st of December 1939, he achieved his highest daily count of 25 kills. In his diary, military chaplain Antti Rantama reported 259 confirmed kills made by rifle and an equal number of kills by submachine gun from the beginning of the war until the 7th of March 1940. Later in his book, Rantama credited Simo with a total of 542 kills. On one occasion, after Simo had once again killed an enemy sniper with a single shot, the Russians tried to kill him by shooting indirect fire of mortar bombardment at the vicinity of his firing position. Incredibly, he was not wounded or killed, making it out without a scratch. On another occasion, an artillery shell landed near his firing position and tore apart the back of his greatcoat, but he survived this with only a minor scratch to his back. Simo's reputation as a marksman soon reached the Russian front lines, and they refer to him as the White Death. The Winter War captured international attention, and many nations sympathized with the Finnish cause. However, Finland lacked substantial support, and by March 1940, facing overwhelming Soviet numbers and resources, they had to sign the Moscow Peace Treaty. As a result, Finland lost 9% of its territory and had to resettle around 12% of its population, totaling 420,000 people. More than 25,000 Finns died, and an additional 45,000 were wounded during the war, which lasted 105 days. On the other hand, Soviet losses were catastrophic, and the country's international reputation suffered. Although their gains exceeded their pre-war demands, and the distance from the newly agreed border to Leningrad increased from 32 to 130 kilometers, the Soviets paid a heavy price. In the fighting, they claimed approximately 125,000 dead or missing, and over 260,000 wounded. Moreover, Finland, which was originally neutral, would become a Soviet enemy in the years to come. On the 6th of March 1940, Simo Häyhä was severely wounded on the battlefield when an explosive bullet fired by a Red Army soldier hit his lower left jaw. Simo lapsed into a coma from which he would not awake until 1 week later, by which time the armistice had already been signed. Following his injury, Simo suffered from lasting facial scarring and near constant pain for many years. He had to undergo 26 surgical operations on his jaw, and his speech was never fully restored. Simo was awarded the 1st and 2nd class Medals of Liberty, as well as the 3rd and 4th class Crosses of Liberty. After the war, he became a successful moose hunter and dog breeder. In addition to farming, he enjoyed hunting, and his hunting parties over the years included the President of Finland, Urho Kekkonen. However, his post-war years were sad. The injuries he sustained in the war left recognizable scars on his face, and as a result, Simo avoided large groups of people. Because some people did not approve of his actions during the Winter War, Häyhä was met not only with hate, but even death threats. He never married, lived as a bachelor, and suffered from loneliness and fear. Nights were especially difficult for him. Simo was known as a modest man who never boasted of his wartime merits, and he rarely spoke of the war and his experiences. However, in an interview shortly before his 96th birthday, Simo opened up about what he experienced during the Winter War. When asked if he felt remorse for having killed so many people, he replied, "I did what I was told to do, as well as I could. There would be no Finland unless everyone else had done the same." Simo Häyhä was 96 years old when he died in a war veterans nursing home in Hamina on the 1st of April 2002. There were many tears shed for Simo Häyhä. Thanks for watching the World History channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.